So the big game turned into a big win, but maybe some more big concerns after 42-35 over Indiana. Talking Ohio State football here each and every week at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. You can see it's our 81st edition. And, of course, the Buckeyes off the win over top 10 Indiana, travel to Illinois to try to maintain the Illabuck. All right, we got Kevin Noon on the line. We are awaiting Tony Gerdeman and Steve Hellwagon, but we got Kevin Noon on the line from Buckeye Grove. Check him out. Check out the rest of the staff there. You know the Rivals brand, so give it a look there at Buckeye Grove. Kevin, how you doing today?
Doing great. A little bit of an early time for us to go here with some other stuff happening in the Ohio State universe. Men's basketball starts today, but anytime's a good time to talk Ohio State football.
Absolutely. So that's a good point that Kevin makes right there. So we come your way typically Wednesdays at 2 o'clock Eastern time, but we have floated all throughout the week. We've got 3 contributors, including myself. We've got a schedule each week. So you just subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live. I announce it on a regular basis. As soon as we know, you know, so you can be right here. Bring your comments, your questions, your debate topics. Leave them in the live chat. I'll be monitoring there. Otherwise, Kevin, there's a whole bunch we can talk about. Maybe like pass defense. Maybe we can start there.
Yeah, I mean, it was dismal. I mean, Ohio State gave up 491 yards to Indiana, to Michael Penix. I think it was like the 4th most ever. I don't think they're going to ever approach the number 1, which was 620 to Dave Wilson in Illinois in 1980. But to be determined after what we kind of saw here. A lot of guys just appeared to be out of position. This wasn't a case of like Penn State where Sean Clifford and Jahan Dotson made some plays. These were cases where wide receivers were wide open. I mean, just wide open. Nobody around there. Safety jumps a route and is out of place. Corners just not where they need to be. Is it a Jimmy and Joe's situation or is it a scheme situation? We had a chance to talk to Kerry Combs this week on the weekly Zoom call, and there's some things that certainly can be addressed. And I'll be interested here over the next 3 games where Ohio State certainly is not playing 3 prolific pass teams with Illinois, Michigan State, and Michigan. If they can figure it out, and if they need to start rolling some new blood in there just to try and find the secret sauce.
You would think it's not a Jimmy and Joe's issue, especially with the likes of Sean Wade, to start with him off the top. But he's had his issues personally in pass coverage, but he's certainly not a general concern from anyone from a talent standpoint. That's for sure.
I was just going to say, he made the move from the slot corner to outside, and he was really, really good at the slot corner position. But obviously that outside corner is where the money is at the next level or whatnot. And that was part of what predicated his move to coming back. So, I don't know how you turn around and sit there and say, hey, Sean, we really need you back at slot corner. And, then that creates the big issue about who do you put back out there at the outside corner. So, it's not a lot of easy answers.
Yeah, it seems to be a confidence issue from a number of guys, and then also the communication and the breakdown in scheme, or the communication and implementation, execution of the scheme on the field. Because my thought process about the secondary coming into this season was, yeah, they lose 3 prominent players, 2 of them first-round draft picks. So there's going to be some development issues and growth needed there. But at the same time, when you mention the Jimmies and the Joes, they're not replacing the 4 and 5 stars with 3 stars. They're replacing them with more 4 and 5 stars. But we talked about it all off season, those positional units getting hurt more so that had the turnover because of the lack of preparation time to get the young players up to speed.
Right. And then you also lose a couple players to the legal system, Amir Reep and Justin Went. And, I'm not necessarily saying that both of them would have this all turned around. Reep was playing a decent amount in a backup role last year. And you just add it to the numbers. You add it to the numbers when you lose an Okuda, you lose an Arnett, you lose a Jordan Fuller. I mean, hell, Jordan Fuller may be having the best season of the 3 defensive backs right now, and he was drafted the lowest of the 3 of them. it does eventually catch up to you. I mean, you can feed the machine for so long, but when you essentially lose half of a class because of other things that have nothing to do with football itself, you do run into that issue. And then the loss of Cameron Brown early in the season, you lose a starting corner there. You take a thin position and make it already thinner. So, you got to wonder if we're going to see guys like Ryan Watts, if we're going to see guys like Bryson Shaw. Legend Cavazos just lost his black stripe. He's only been healthy for about a week. So for everybody saying, well, you need to throw him in there, you need to ease him in there. Let's just throwing somebody to the wolves isn't necessarily going to be the situation. That's like throwing an anvil overboard to somebody who's drowning off the bow of the Queen Mary. It's not necessarily the right answer. Congratulations for the efforts of trying to, recognizing the problem, but maybe the wrong implementation.
Yeah, I think Tom Brady would agree with your evaluation of Jordan Fuller after the other night and a couple interceptions on Monday Night Football. Also, we got to take into consideration the best friend of a secondary and a pass defense is a pass rush. I don't think that the pass rush has been awful by any stretch, but maybe not up to Chase Young standards. When you've got a guy that you're only going to get, well, at most schools, maybe once every generation, at even a first-rate school. At Ohio State, maybe it's the Joey, Nick Bosa, and then Chase Young. So maybe you get that guy every couple of years. But certainly they've got, again, no dearth of talent up front, but maybe not that guy that just completely wrecks the offensive scheme, that can come off the corner in a flash, and for those 6 to 8 times a game, get, the arm on the quarterback, pull him down, harass him just to no end, that makes the coverage insignificant on those particular plays. They don't have that guy. I know that listening to the news conference yesterday, I think it was Jonathan Cooper mentioned they are constantly evaluating their pass rush moves to figure out how can we get there a split second sooner, because that might make all the difference in the world. Getting a hand in somebody's face, getting, brushing their shoulder, their arm, just making them uncomfortable, getting there just a split second sooner. Our technique, refining that all the time.
Yeah, they're just not getting home. They're getting close. I mean, that half second that Coop talked about would probably affect a lot of things, but it just hasn't necessarily happened. We're seeing some things in some small segments. I mean, we saw the Tommy Togiai game. Jonathan Cooper, according to Pro Football Focus, is one of the highest ranked players in college football right now. But you go and you look at the production points that maybe the layman looks at, which are sacks and TFLs, and the numbers aren't necessarily there. But he's been doing a pretty good job. I think the enigma right now is, where's Zach Harrison? Zach Harrison is supposed to be the next great DN or next great rush end in the line, and he just hasn't necessarily been able to put it all together yet. And it's not a lack of talent, and it's not a lack of understanding. He just hasn't been able to put it all together yet. And maybe it's just because it's just so much uncertainty and so many changing parts around him on the line that, when I think he's only had about 100 defensive snaps over the course of the year or whatever, about, whatever it is, 25 a game. Maybe he needs a little bit more time out there to be able to figure it out. I mean, Ryan Day was asked about, getting young guys out there if, Ohio State gets up. I mean, Ohio State needs to finish games out, needs to play second halves first before anybody starts talking about that. But he also did make the point that we need to get our veterans these reps. We need to get them these snaps. And then a lot of times they're talking about the Justin Fields and the Garrett Wilsons and the Chris Olaves. But I put it right there, too, with some of these defensive ends and defensive linemen, because it's all well and good that nobody's really seeing more than 35 a game outside of maybe Coop and Togiai. But, I don't know if people are seeing enough live action to really start to figure out what's working and what's not working. And while you're going against a great line in practice, it's not the same as game circumstances.
We welcome everyone in the live chat. Thank you for jumping aboard a day before Thanksgiving and all the fine happy Thanksgiving wishes to Kevin and myself. We got Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop and Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts, of course, jumping on here soon, hopefully. But hey, I'm taking advantage of the wealth of knowledge here from Kevin Noon right now. So we're breaking down, of course, the Indiana victory, 42-35. Let's not lose sight of victory, 42-35 over a good Hoosiers team, a team that I don't necessarily believe is a top 10 team in the nation, but they're still a really good team, probably a top 15 to 20 team in the nation when it's all said and done. We shall see. Also want to let you know that we're looking for a sponsor. So this show's been able to be sustained thanks to Kevin, thanks to Tony, thanks to Steve for 81 weeks. We're looking for a sponsor. Have been able to do it elsewhere. So Buckeye fans need you to step up. If you own a business, think that this would be a good match, contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail, MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Or if you know of someone and believe that their business would be a great match for what we do here, then certainly contact them, contact me, get us together, and we'll make it happen. In addition to that, these shows will stay alive based on contributions from you and based on sponsorships. So that's what we aim to do. Ohio State taking on Illinois coming up this week. The Illabuck, I'm sure that's on everyone's mind right now. That's certainly a prize to be won and maintained by the Buckeyes. I don't know the last time they lost to Illinois. What are we looking at, Kevin?
Yeah, I
in my head.
just written about it. I know for
George.
It's been no, they haven't lost in Champaign since '91, but they've lost 5 times since then, all in Columbus.
01.
I was saying, don't forget the Mendenhall Juice Williams.
07. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be the last one. 07. They got a scare in 06, despite being consensus number 1. They got a scare on a cold day in Champaign the year before in 06. That's right. 01. They came down the stretch during that rough season with in Tressel's first year. They still had a chance to win the Big Ten championship the last couple of years. They were coming off a win over Purdue, but they lost to Illinois on a couple of Craig Krenzel mistakes in relief of Steve Belisari before they took on Michigan and won that game, of course, in Ann Arbor for the first time in forever. Yeah, that Jeff George era, they lost 5 straight, and then after
Coop couldn't beat Illinois. I mean, Coop couldn't beat Michigan, and Coop couldn't beat Illinois. I mean, losing to Lou Tepper and guys like that, it was one of those confounding things during my very angry and confused collegiate days where Ohio State football was very different than it is today.
Yes, Jason Verdusco and company, but Jeff George, 5 consecutive years. I believe the last year was 94, and then they suddenly flipped a switch. I think both programs to a certain extent. And during the latter course of the 90s, there were a lot of like 56-0, 49-0 kind of games against the Illini. The other thing that comes to mind in regards to the pass defense, Kevin, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because coaches know where their weaknesses are and can lean on their strengths. This rush defense is phenomenal. So you can usually scheme something up to say, okay, I believe that we are this strong in rush defense, especially when we're playing Indiana, and they've been averaging 3.5 yards per carry from 2 really good backs. So they're not blocking anyone, that we can kind of shade some things, move some people out of the box, do a few things. And I know it's not as simple as it used to be when you had your 4-3 defense and you only had 2 receivers to cover, and you could say, okay, well, we're going to take people out of the box because they spread out these formations so much and still run the ball, that it's not quite as cut and dry. But still, when you can lean on a rush defense knowing, hey, until they don't hold up, they are a staple. I think 1 yard against Indiana, whatever the number was, that they would be able to take advantage of that to help the pass defense.
Yeah, and it was 1 yard to the negative. It was minus 1 yard. And while everybody was obviously stressing over the fact that it was a 1-possession game, that there was the missed targeting call that would have kept Ohio State's drive in the north end alive or whatnot. I mean, it was, the run defense really seemed to have it figured out. But let's also remember, Indiana was averaging about 95 yards a game on the ground. They didn't have a game where they had more than 118. So it was a good situation of where the Buckeyes, their strength was able to match up against a team's weakness. And it'll be a little bit different this week because Indiana is much more of a run team than a passing team. I believe they're 22nd in the nation running the ball. They have a talented duo rushing. And, the truth of the matter is they played 4 different quarterbacks this year due to COVID and injuries and everything else. So even though they have, quote unquote, their best one back in Brandon Peters, Ohio State's going to see a steady dose of the run, I believe, but they're going to be coming in with all the confidence in the world, allowing -1 yard on 16 carries.
Steve Hellwagon's on the line from Bucknuts 247 Sports. Steve, how's it going?
Good morning, guys. I got sent to the grocery store, and as you can imagine, thought we had plenty of time, and it was a total and complete bleep show, as the boys like to say. So a madhouse. So a little crazy over there, but glad to be back. And got to say, the weather here in Ohio is no bueno. It is a steady shower of rain and about 40 degrees. So you can just imagine how much fun that was loading and unloading the car in the pouring down rain. So, yeah, so we got that going on, which is good.
Well, we've been raining on the Ohio State secondary for about 10 or 15 minutes, beating them
Easy
up.
Easy to do, no doubt.
Well, Steve, we pretty much sized it up as, all the blown assignments, working in. Kevin gave us the litany of options in regards to working in young players. The pass rush could be better. It's not been awful, but it's been spotty. They don't have the Chase Young, like, I'm going to be on the quarterback like every other play kind of player, at least not in regards to production at this point. So your thoughts about the pass defense?
Yeah, I could talk for 20 minutes. I'll just whittle it down to 3 or 4 things. And first of all, you lost 7 starters off the defense that are now NFL rookies. I know this is the 4th game and you got to get stuff straightened out, but it usually takes about a half season to recover from something like that. So that's the first thing that you think about. There is no Chase Young, as you mentioned. They don't have that elite All-American pass rusher. They've got some good players. Their best pass rushes came on blitzes. They got sacks on a couple of them. Zach Harrison hit the quarterback's arm one time. They ruled it an incomplete pass. It could have been ruled either way. It seemed to me he was done taking the ball back and was about to move it forward, or had just ever so slightly moved it forward when the ball came out. So I can live with that one, even though, a lot of people were upset about that call. But then what you've got, again, I think the pass rush is part and parcel of the whole problem. I mean, you've got to get the ball out of his hands. Zach Harrison's got to play. He's their best pass rusher, bar none. I get Jonathan Cooper's had a good start, but I think, the 2 sacks they got were because of the blitz as much as anything, as anything that the guys up front did. So to me, I said this, Kevin wasn't there, but to our friend Tony Gerdeman, who is absent today, who was sitting next to me, I'm like, Tony, they've got him backed up 3rd down, deep in their own end. Where is Zach Harrison? This is where you need to get him off the field. And Penix stood back there and had all kinds of time, completed a little pass out in the left flat for a 1st down. And then he went downtown on the next play. No Zach Harrison, no pressure. And voila, there you go, blown coverage. So that gets us to blown coverages. And, it wasn't a case where their wide receiver went up and beat Ohio State's DB. That happened on the one play down the right sideline where Wade kind of rode him all the way down the sideline and drew a flag, and then Freifogel discarded him, which I think the discard in this instance was probably legal because he'd been ridden the entire way down the sideline and then caught it and took it in. That's one thing, okay? If that happens, bully for you. Freifogel's a great player, and so's Filior, and so's Penix, and so's the tight end Hendershot, and so's Marshall, the other wide receiver. They're veterans. They've made plays for 2 or 3 years now. Great scheme. Their offensive line held up, didn't allow, a lot of pressure, a lot of sacks, but the other ones were all coverage breaks. When the guy is wide open by 10, 15 yards and there's nobody around, they run a pick play later on. It was just a comedy of errors for the Ohio State secondary, and they can only do better going forward. The good news is I don't think Illinois, Michigan State with Rockhead Lombardi, or the next Derek Carr, Cade McNamara, people on our board, he played one good game, McNamara, and then on the Michigan message board, they're like, this guy's the next Derek Carr. And somebody on our message board took the screenshot, brought it over, and said, Well, that didn't take long, did it? So, they've switched off Milton and on to McNamara up there, and God bless them. And none of the next four teams, either Northwestern with Ramsey, he's just kind of pedestrian, it seems. It doesn't seem like any of the next four teams are going to take advantage of it. So they've got 4 games to get their stuff straight and figure out how to defend the pass. That's my 25-cent dime store analysis of everything that is illing this Ohio State secondary.
Well, we could consider that a good thing from it ensuring a spot in the college football playoff, or we could consider it a bad thing in regards to preparation for the likes of Mac Jones and Trevor Lawrence.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Kev.
I was just going to say, you certainly need to get tested, and let's be real here. I mean, Notre Dame. I'm not to get into the CFP discussion too deeply, but I'm more than happy to, and to cuss that room out in Great Park, Texas. 12-7 against Louisville. I mean, Ole Miss is still scoring points up against Alabama at this point. It's not like any of these teams are perfect, and I think that it's a case. I mean, even with Clemson, let's take the Notre Dame game off the board. But they didn't necessarily look all that great in the Boston College game. Yet you were having the talking heads sitting there saying, "Oh, they've dominated everything." No, they really haven't. They had to come back late in that game. I was sitting in a sports bar restaurant with at least with Steve. I don't remember, somebody else on the beat was with us as well, as we were kind of watching the game, and it was like, they don't necessarily look infallible, but I think you need those types of tests. But they need to be tests that you can sit there and make the adjustments to solve the questions or whatnot. And we're going to see over the next 4 weeks if Ohio State can solve this, or if we're going to see more of a situation akin to 2018 where the defense never really got it right. They were just able to apply enough duct tape at times just to keep it to keep the boat from sinking, and then finally their luck sort of ran out.
We'll get to the comments and questions, but before we do, we want to remind you that we're here every week. But hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for the notifications when you do. That way you know when we're going live. We've got 4 schedules to organize. Therefore, we need to move the show around from time to time. So keep it locked in here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Also, we need a sponsor. Why? Well, we're working. That's why we're working, and people typically get paid when they work, and we need to support the channel. And the only way that this channel and this show, by extension, will be extended and will be sustained and thrive will be with a combination of your contributions and with a sponsor. So if you run a small business, know of somebody else that runs one that could benefit from advertising and sponsorship here, specifically at our Ohio State show, please let me know. Just anybody out there, I say this all the time, can contact me with any recommendations, requests, anything at MarkRogersTV@gmail.com, and I get them by the dozens every day. All right, let's get to some of these questions and comments that are made. Frank Carone says, now I will preface this by saying, me personally, I think that play calling is one of the most overrated arguments and criticisms in football. But it is important. I'm not discarding that. Play calling is very important, but I think when the plays get executed, it all looks good. And when they don't get executed, or maybe the other team's just better from a talent perspective, that's not the issue with this team. But just keep in mind, watching other teams, when you criticize the play calling, hey, if some monster up front's just blowing up the play at the line of scrimmage, then you could have the best play in the world. It's not working. But there was a criticism or a couple comments in the chat, you guys, concerning play calling. Do you see any issues there?
Steve, you want to jump in on this one? So I took the last one.
Yeah, issues on play calling. Well, you're talking about defensively. Indiana ran 67 plays, and as we say, they are a very talented team. Welcome aboard, Tony, our good friend. They're a very talented team, and you can't blitz on every play. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to everything that is plagued this Ohio State defense. And really, They played 5 really good halves of football, both halves against Nebraska. In the first half of each of the last 3 games, I crunched the numbers. They're giving up like 100 yards on average in the first half of the last games and 5 points. And then it's something like 250 or 260 yards on average and like 20 points for the defense. And that doesn't even include the punt return touchdown that Rutgers had, that throwback. So I deducted that one out of the total, and it still looks really, really awful. So you prorate those out for an entire game, that's like 520 yards and 40 points. That's not acceptable on anybody's math. So they've got to figure out what the problem is. And, I'm going to err to the side of, Madison and Combs have been coaching football for a very long time, and same with Larry Johnson. They're going to get to the bottom of it, and Ryan Day is going to spend a little bit more time over on defense and make sure. And, one more factor I didn't throw in there is your depth. It appears I saw Kevin's play snap count story that Wade and Seven Banks played almost every play, if not every play. And same with Hooker. And then Proctor played about 2/3 of the plays, Williamson about 2/3 of the plays. And they probably went 5 DBs a few and pulled a linebacker or whatever a few plays. So that's part of your problem, is that we've never seen in the quote modern era against a high test offense that corners play an entire game. They usually only play like Denzel Ward and those guys, Burnett, whoever a few years ago, would only play about 2/3 of the plays because it was just too grueling to expect them to run for 67 plays. So when you lost Cam Brown, there went your safety net, and they're not comfortable apparently putting Tyreek Johnson, Ryan Watts, or anybody else out there just yet. And same at safety. They're not going beyond Proctor and Hooker right now. So that's a major problem when you don't have depth. That adds and that exacerbates, because you can't expect those guys to play full capacity every play of a 67-play game with all of the running Indiana put them through.
We welcome in Tony Gerdeman from Buckeyes Scoop, so we can go one way or the other. Either we can punish Tony for showing up late, or we can let him talk for the last 40 minutes. We can go one or the other.
I'll take the punishment, please.
I'll take them time,
Tony.
I can go make a sandwich or something.
You're not here just for your good looks and amazing presence. You got to deliver something for us. So what we've been delivering, as you can imagine, for the first 90% of the first portion of the show here is beating up the secondary. So you can go that route. We also talked about the pass rush. That's the best friend of a pass defense, no question. Jonathan Cooper in particular, the comment from yesterday's news conference and the player interviews that stuck out in my mind was him talking about doing everything, just analyzing the film, the technique to a T, to just see how can we get there a step sooner, a split second sooner to cause havoc, do something, get an arm on a shoulder, whatever it takes to get the guy uncomfortable back in the pocket. So your thoughts about the whole deal?
Well, and that's what Larry Johnson spends a lot of his time on, just analyzing the video and how do I get a split second here, a split second here. If I point the foot this way, if I have the right foot out this far. And so he does that all the time. And I agree, they're almost getting there, and they are creating hurries and pressure, but everybody wants sacks. And there's no Chase Young here just collapsing everything and concerning everybody. But the secondary still is the biggest problem. And yeah, it starts with the pass rush, but when they've only got 5 guys they trust, and I don't know that they have 5 guys they trust. They have 5 guys they play. They can't even go to a dime. Who do you throw in? Like Tyreek Johnson, who they don't want to play. Maybe we'll see Legend Cavazos some this week. He, is finally healthy, lost his black stripe. Maybe he gets involved. But when you're talking about moving somebody or benching Marcus Hooker, then it's like, well, now you're going to put in somebody you have no idea if they're going to do better or worse. Although you could argue, can you do worse? And Marcus Hooker has graded out a champion in other games. He didn't this past game. But, do you just have Josh Proctor back there the entire time, and Marcus Hooker then takes some. Do Hooker and Proctor basically switch positions where, Hooker then comes in on nickel and in the slots, and then sometimes drops back with the two safeties. Because right now, to me, he's the biggest issue, and not the only issue, but I think everybody else is good enough. Although we haven't seen anybody else put in that position. Maybe Josh Proctor would be exposed there as well as that last deep safety. We don't really know because it's just been Hooker for the most part. And when you watch the mistakes he's making, as both Ryan Day and Kerry Combs have said, it's fixable. And they're absolutely right. These are issues that are fixable. You're a deep safety and you're jumping on crossing routes that are covered. You don't need to do that. But you still have to fix him. I mean, you still have to get him to listen and play the position properly. And they are very fixable. Sometimes, though, the player isn't. And so that's where they are now. They have these next two games against teams that can't really throw the ball that well. So if you want to try something new, this would be the time to do it because they have to get that guy in there. And I said this on the podcast. You've got to get that guy some reps before he faces a dynamic passer like Cade McNamara.
That was Tony's punchline, I believe.
I took my shot at him a little bit ago, Tony, just for your reference, and I think this is so funny. Their people on their message board said he's the next Derek Carr or whatever, and people on our message board screenshotted it and brought it over and said, well, this didn't take long, did it? So they have moved on from Milton, who was the second coming of Christ, and or Tom Brady, and now on to McNamara. So glad to know they found their quarterback of the future. Here we go. Again.
Guys. Get tired of just sitting there calling them out on their you-know-what. I mean,
don't lampoon rival.
Tired of it, but don't we as a collective just get tired of it at some point? I mean, they did invent the September Heisman after all.
Well, technically, they have been the quarterback of the future, the quarterback of the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. Until they get him bunged up.
I can't wait till 5-star J.J. McCarthy gets there next year. And then I don't know, do they alternate quarterback of the future each week depending on who does what? It's going to be fun. Assuming, of course, that McCarthy even signs, because why would you go and play behind Cade McNamara for the next 3 years?
That's what it looks like.
Well, maybe Matt Campbell could convince him to stay.
He's always been my choice, too. I always throw him out there first.
You know, I say Fitzy, and I know Fitzy is comfortable and never going to leave Northwestern, but if you threw double what Fitzy's making at Northwestern at him, because he already has to recruit the prep schools and the academies to get guys to go to Northwestern, great academic. If he just brought the same roster with him to Michigan, they'd win 9 or 10 games and look pretty good doing it. Maybe if they sprinkle in a Heisman player or an All-American player here and there, maybe they could win the Big Ten one year. I don't know, but I think Fitz is the guy. I know that's way outside the box thinking, but it would be a culture shift for him and Michigan to take a private school guy and put him into that. Well, they think they're a private school anyway, so whatever. But to me, he would be the guy I would. If I had a perfect choice, that'd be the guy I'd go for.
Well, Steve, I don't know that he needs to leave. I was watching ESPN this morning, and Heather Dinich and Desmond Howard both said that Northwestern is the team outside of the top 4 this year most likely to make it into the playoffs by beating Ohio State, and Ohio State being the most likely team to drop out of the playoffs. So he doesn't need to leave to make, to win a national title or anything like that. He only, he has to beat lowly Ohio State this year, and then he's in the playoffs.
Yeah. Kind of like Fickle. I mean, Fickle turned down Michigan State, and if everything breaks right and they win out, they've got a chance at the number 4 spot. So it's going to be tough, but, we'll see. It would help them if somebody – I don't know who Texas A&M still has to play. If somebody could doink off Texas A&M, which you never put that out of the realm for Jimbo, that would really help UC, because I think Alabama beats Florida. And then they either need Notre Dame to lose to North Carolina and Clemson, or they need Notre Dame to win out and beat Clemson, one or the other, and that would open up a spot possibly.
Off the top of my head, Tennessee, LSU. I know it's LSU this week. Tennessee, Ole Miss for Texas A&M, or it might be Auburn. They had one of those games canceled. They need to make up.
Keep an eye on Ole Miss because Ole Miss can't play a lick of defense, but they'll put 70 points up, and they could win a 70-69 type of 69. They could win a 70-69 game easily against them.
Mm-hmm. It'll be a fun one.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Auburn's no easy out, and LSU has the talent. They've put it together like twice this year where they've beaten some decent teams and look awful the rest of the time, but it's still a talented and fast roster. All right, so Frank doesn't like the play calling, wasn't specific on necessarily what's wrong with the play calling. BJA1127, and if you guys have really hit on this throughout all the conversation about the secondary, he's wondering if the scheme has been changed since last year and the year before. In the secondary in particular.
I think we're seeing some different things thrown out there. I think Kerry Combs has been trying to throw a lot of different looks out there or whatnot and seeing what sticks. I think we're seeing more two safety than just single high or whatnot. But I guess kind of it all gets back to an earlier point. How do you play a 3-corner system when you don't have faith in 3 corners? But how do you play a 2 safety system when you don't really have faith in 2 safeties? So I think that there does need to be some simplification of the defense in some ways. I think that we've seen it through the years where the defense may have a hiccup or whatnot. They peel it down a little bit, and then they seem to grasp that. So I think maybe that's what you're going to have to do there. I've got a radical suggestion right here, and I say you move Kerry Combs up to the box and you bring Greg Madison down. And I know everybody's like, but Kerry Combs and the juice and the Red Bull and the coffee and all that. Well, if you need him to generate the juice in front of a crowd of 364, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. But I think that maybe having Kerry Combs and his depth of knowledge of all of these defenses that he learned with the Tennessee Titans under Dean Pease, he needs to have the opportunity to be able to survey the field and see everything. And I think that you maybe give that an opportunity and see if you have more success. And I know that goes against a lot of what everybody believes. And we all love looking at the replays on TV on the sidelines of him running with short sleeves and fist pumping and everything else. But this ain't no beauty contest. Win the damn games.
Well, didn't they move Ed Warner up to the box for the Notre Dame game in the 2015 season? The offense was struggling, and then finally I think they moved him up to the box so that they're better able to communicate. Him and Tim Beck getting together, Wonder Twin powers activate, and then they destroyed the Irish. Yeah, it will be interesting to see if that's one of the changes that they make. Because just talking to Ryan Day after the game, it sure seemed like he didn't expect any personnel changes. But then talking to him this week, it sure seemed like he was on board with some personnel changes or some sort of changes. And I've seen what you're suggested elsewhere as well. And if at some point you have to do something different. And if that's it, getting different eyes in different places, and it would be strange not to see him on the sideline. But like he said, because we've talked to him in the past about this, and he said, I'll do whatever. I like to be on the sideline, but obviously you'll do whatever. Greg Madison, I think, would prefer to be on the sideline. He doesn't like being up in the box. He's been on the sideline for most of his career. When we talked to him about it a month or so ago, and I'm sure he would probably welcome that. But until you get somebody playing better at deep safety, I don't know that anything matters. Pass rush, linebackers playing base linebackers, play base defense, and on passing downs, like none of that matters until you've got a guy that you can trust at that free safety spot. And we don't know if they have that yet. We know they don't.
Yeah, it's a good point. He's triggering in the wrong direction. He's triggering, a couple times on the crossing route. I think Kerry Combs mentioned that his eyes got distracted or whatever, made some comments. And They were very diplomatic in their comments. They don't want to throw any of the players under the bus, and that's how it should be. It's college football, but the eye in the sky never lies. I mean, the deep ball that Seven Banks, appears to get beat deep on. I'm watching through my binoculars, and when he gets up, he's looking back toward the line of scrimmage, like, "Bro, where were you?" So that kind of is a dead giveaway that he was expecting help on the deep ball down the middle. They put a backup linebacker in, brought a running back out of the backfield, and he caught a pass down the sideline for 50 yards. Maybe he thought he was passing him off to a deep third safety or something, or a corner or whatever, but nobody was there. And whether he was supposed to run with him or not, we don't know, but it's a coverage break. And is this scheme, is it too intricate that these guys don't understand it? They're having a problem figuring out what they should do on each play, or are they just not good enough to execute a basic scheme that they're being asked to execute? I don't know. Again, as I say, there's no one size fits all for every play, because Indiana gives you so many different looks, and it's like, if they give us this look, we do this. And that's kind of where every play is an animal unto itself. So to say there's one overriding problem, I don't know that you could say that. They got a lot of problems, and it's being able to read and diagnose what the opposing team is giving you. And Indiana was one of the few teams that they're going to play that had the athletes and the quarterback that could expose your mistakes. Like, they could still make the same mistakes the next 3 weeks, and we'd never know it, because
next two.
Yeah, well, you're right. Okay, Michigan, you're right. Illinois and Michigan State probably can't expose them the way Indiana did, so we wouldn't even know it. But we do know, if they get into a semifinal against Jones or Book or Lawrence, it's turn out the lights, party over. So, 55-50 your final. Good night, everyone. So, and hope you made the last play, or you're done. So that's kind of what I look at it.
Well, and those teams can run the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially Alabama. Well, and Notre Dame. Clemson has had its issues running the ball against some decent defenses, just like they did against Ohio State last year. Travis Etienne is not tearing it up this year. So, more comments about the play calling. I'll say this, that Ohio State scored 42 points against what I consider to be a good defense, a top 25 defense in the country, most likely. Not a great defense, but a good defense. Ohio State put up 42. Well, Justin Fields threw away 3 drives himself with poor decisions. And the way I look at those 3 poor decisions were, the deep throw that the safety jumped was just late. And it was a conventional poor decision in terms of reading it and going too late and underthrowing the pass. The other 2 were, I'm scrambling, a guy's on my back, and I think I can make this heroic throw across the field to Julian Fleming here because I see him there. And it's a type decision that somebody shouldn't make in Justin Fields at his level, but he still threw the ball crisply. He was delivering with velocity. When he made the throws, he made 3 poor decisions and maybe a couple others that he got away with, but it was a bit uncharacteristic and certainly in my eyes the worst performance of his career. But they put up 42 points still on a good defense with Justin Fields giving away 3 drives, or I guess 2 because they got the one back on a fumble. Right. And they could have scored late in the game. And so the game was a little bit more comfortable than 42-35 with Indiana with the football in the closing seconds.
Oh my, how far we've come that a 300-yard passing game is considered a bad game. I understand the 3 picks are there, but how far we've come where, we're having to lambaste 3 picks. I mean, I've looked at the evolution of the Ohio State quarterback position through the years, and it's remarkable.
The thing that I would agree with the comment is that Ohio State only scored 7 points on offense in the second half. And so that's alarming, but it's also indicative of, Ryan Day keeps talking about how the players need to keep their energy. And I keep saying the players feed off of the coach. And as long as he's going to pull the throttle back, and he's done it in past games as well, where you're just like, all right, we're up enough. And because he even said after that first touchdown in the third quarter, he thought they were going to blow him out. So did he let up? Is like, does the team reflect his attitude, or his, all right, ball game is over, now we can just go ahead and just go through the motions? And so I'm interested to see, does he keep the pedal down? But then there's also this, we want to get the younger guys in, and so it's a tough balance. But at this point, you're kind of in playoff mode now. You've got to get things ramped up, and I think you need to get that pedal down, because at this point, if you lose Justin Fields, you'll have to deal with it at that point. But you almost can't worry about it now. Now you've got to get everybody up to speed. You've got to get the whole November is for contenders thing going, and beyond. You've got to get in that mode where you're firing on all cylinders. So I don't think you can really worry about development anymore.
So
how about
go ahead, Kevin.
Run the first team offense? And I mean, that's the thing is, well, and I understand it's one of the most maddening things. Well, we got to play these guys every year. Well, you don't want them to score. Stop them. Then stop them. We're not here to sit there. There is a sport where we can do that. It's called youth soccer, where everybody can sit there and have orange slices and everything else afterwards. Beat the tar out of them. To hell with them. Beat them. Stop them if you're that upset.
He went orange slices.
Don't get me started. But I just
okay, Murph.
I hate it when we're told that thing. Well, we just wanted to sit there and we'd shown enough. That's bull. That's bull.
What if Ryan Day after the game would? I'd like to apologize for those 8 second half touchdowns. We had some young guys in there. They didn't know it. We didn't have the right play to take a knee, and so we ended up scoring 8 extra touchdowns. And I'll call Scott Frost after and talk to him about that.
Sorry.
Our bad.
Good Lord.
I've got all my vinegar out now. I'm trying to be good.
In amongst all this, hopefully my internet's not screwing us up there. But anyway, I saw quite a bit of breakup. But regardless, I will bring up a positive. So we've been talking for 40 minutes? I don't know what time it is. 40 minutes, something in that range. I will bring up a positive that we've been waiting to see, and that's that the running game was on point. And you guys have me. Am I back?
You're back.
You're back now.
Uh-oh.
Frozen.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we know whose internet it is. It's Mark's.
Yeah.
You guys have me?
Yep.
Hello? Am I back?
Yeah, you're jumping around a little bit.
Okay. You guys, if I ever get lost, even though I'm probably transmitting the whole thing, you guys just keep going. But am I back? Am I good?
You're good now.
Yeah, you're good now.
To point out the one positive in this. There's several, but the one positive that we hadn't seen in the previous weeks was running the football and being able to do it consistently with 2 backs, both. So it wasn't one guy. It was, okay, the offensive line is doing some damage here and they're making some hay. And even when there wasn't a crease or a gaping hole, they were just shoving guys back. There were a few times Master T just went into the line and got 6 yards just because the offensive line, and there wasn't really a hole there, but they just plowed ahead. And for all his, I want to say, a few deficiencies or just where he's not outstanding, and we've all noted that in regards to the wiggle downfield and making a guy miss in open space, he does take the football and go north-south and pick his crease and go.
I think a lot of it is I like T getting the ball, and I like him just hitting that hole. It also helps that Justin Fields rushed for like 78 yards in that game, and that opens everything else up. And it's no surprise they rushed for 307 yards or 300 yards or whatever when he's part of that. And it's tougher when he's not. And as long as he continues to do that when it's necessary, then I think they'll continue to do well. And like Trey Sermon is playing well, Master Teague is going well. You throw in some end arounds to Garrett Wilson, Justin Fields is now involved. And I think the running game is good enough to win it all at this point. It's good enough to be part of a national title offense, especially this one that can throw the ball. And so that just leaves, again, the focus of the entire show, which is the secondary. And it was, I had a podcast yesterday, and I think we spent the first 30 minutes on just the secondary, and everything else is rounding into form, including the running game. Master Teague, they're using him the best way to use him, and he's running hard, and it'll be interesting to see, do we start to see a little bit of Marcus Crowley in there eventually? I know some people are anxious to see him, but I guess as long as Trey Sermon and Master Teague are doing what they do, you don't really need to force the issue with anybody else at this point.
I was going to say, I'll jump in. I mean, Ohio State runs for 307 in that game. They've been averaging 208 before. They just haven't been sexy yards. There haven't been those long runs. There haven't been those highlight type of runs. It's been a lot of grinding or whatnot. So it's easy to just sit there and look at it a top-down view and say, well, the run game isn't that great. But then you go back and you look at the numbers. And again, I'm no math major. That's why I got into journalism. But if it was 207 for the games or 208, and it's 307 in this last game. So they're going to be up, over 220 or so. I don't think the run game certainly is an issue. And, I think that it's going to be something that we're going to see a good dose of, starting with Illinois, because we all know, anybody who's been to that stadium, it's built on an ancient Native American wind tunnel, and it is always about 60-mile-an-hour winds there, so you better be able to run the ball.
And we checked the weather. It's only going to be like 5 miles an hour, but that translates in Illinois to about 40, I believe, during the game. But yeah, Ohio State is leading the Big Ten in rushing right now, 233 yards. Illinois is second, like 222. So they have been doing well. And I'll go back to what we talked about last week or the week before when Ryan Day got after Pat Murphy a little bit for saying you guys only rush for 200, and Ryan Day is like pounding the table or whatever, saying 200 is pretty good, and then 300 is even better. And they got it this time. It wasn't. You could say that 200 or whatever was fluky with the Garrett Wilson and the fake punt, and there's another big run, not the fake punt, but yeah, the fake punt. This was just a more consistent run all day, where there's one big play from Master Teague, but he carried the ball 20 sometimes, so you would expect one big play. So this wasn't fluky at all. This was just a running game that got going, led by an offensive line that seems to be getting angrier as they get more criticism up front, I think.
Folks, don't take for granted our Ohio State show here each and every week. It's only sustained by contributions. We're looking for a sponsor. Please contact me if you know of a way that we can do that, whether that be your personal business or some idea that you have or someone that you know that can contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail, MarkRogersTV at Gmail. It also can be supported by your individual contributions that we see on other shows on a regular basis. So this is only sustainable. We've got 3 professionals here plus myself, and we come here every week, and you got to hit the bell for the notifications once you subscribe, because we're trying to organize 3 different schedules. But again, focusing on the contributions, this is only going to be sustained by your individual contributions, plus hopefully a sponsorship in our future, talking Ohio State football here each and every week. All right. How much of a threat is Illinois? They have won 2 consecutive Big Ten games, and they have technically been Big Ten games. I think Nebraska is starting to creep into that former Rutgers territory, as Illinois won at Rutgers, or a game against Rutgers. Don't know where the game was played. That was one of my few where I completely lost track of it for good reason. 23-20 at the gun. And then they go to Nebraska. Nebraska was supposedly putting it together. That's what my Nebraska sources were telling me, coming off that Penn State win. In Illinois, didn't have to kick another game-winning field goal at the end. They just went in there and lambasted them. It was 28-10 out of the gate and beat them 41-23, I believe was the final. So Illinois showing a bit, it must be that ex-Michigan factor at quarterback, but they're playing some decent football against the teams that they should be able to compete against. Any thoughts about the Illini out there? Oh, Steve, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Dennis.
Okay, got it. I was moving around, so I wanted to mute so I didn't create a lot of background noise. But I'll just say on the running game, Master Teague, he hit the home run finally. And what my experience is, okay, when a guy hits the first home run, there may be some more home runs coming after that, because now he understands exactly what it takes. They blocked it perfectly. He made one man miss because Munford had to let the guy go. Otherwise, it would have been a holding penalty. And he had to make Munford's guy miss. And that's what it takes. And then the acceleration. You know, you're not just running to contact now. You are accelerating away from people. And that's what he got on that play. He accelerated away from the pack. And now he knows and understands in his mind, this is what it takes to break one. I think we're going to see him. I don't know, he'll break one every week, but I think we're going to see more and more of those coming forward, because and he's also probably getting healthy too. Maybe he wasn't entirely, you know, his number one A self the last few weeks, just coming back. So I look for bigger things from him. Illinois, they beat Wisconsin last year at home when they were undefeated and ranked like 6th or 7th in the country. And Wisconsin kind of gift wrapped that game for them, had a bad penalty to prolong a drive, and just some stupid decision making by Paul Blart there in terms of the time management at the end of the game. And Illinois kicked a field goal. The same guy who's there now, I think McCourt is his name, and he hit the one, I think it was a home game for them against Rutgers, I think. And he made the game-winning field goal. Rutgers was favored in the game just because the way that they had played, both teams coming into that. But they've won back-to-back games, which is like almost unheard of in this Lovie Smith regime. And the Wisconsin game last year, I think, was their first win over a ranked opponent back maybe all the way to 2007 when they beat Ohio State, was number 1 in the country. So some sort of, maybe that's top 10, I don't know, but some sort of long string of futility against ranked opponents. So the precedent is there that they can beat a highly ranked team at home. Ohio State is certainly not the number 1 team in the country, or as Jesse Palmer or Pollock or somebody said on the thing last night, they're not as talented as they were last year, which I don't know that really factors into the playoff talk for this season, but it does give you a level of you know, what level they may or may not be. So I'd say Ohio State's got to be on guard. They're also a 30-point favorite. So I think the odds makers and the experts are thinking that if they get their offense up and rolling, it doesn't really matter what Illinois does, because they're not going to score enough points. They haven't shown that they're going to score enough points until last week to beat a good team. So to me, on guard, start fast, put them away early, get some other guys in the game. You know, 45-14 is just fine. Get on the bus, go home, and, you know, move on is my feeling.
A lot of people are talking up Illinois for I don't know what reasons, whether it's we're just, you know, we're just insulating ourselves because nobody really wanted to talk up Indiana last week or whatnot. Illinois has no shot in this game. I don't care. 2007 doesn't mean anything. I'm looking at the box score from the Nebraska game. Illinois ran for 285 and 4 touchdowns. If you think that Illinois is going to run for 285 and 4 touchdowns against Ohio State, you're drunk. And it's 11. It's even too early for day drinking right now. You're drunk. It's not going to happen. Ohio State does need to get out fast, make it to a point of where Illinois has to throw the ball, because Brandon Peters couldn't cut it at Michigan. He's barely cutting it at Illinois. So, no, they have no opportunity. Mike Epstein, Chase Brown are both good backs. They both rushed for 113 and 110, respectively. But, you know, I see Illinois rushing maybe for about $120 tops in this game. And I think Brandon Peters, I think this is going to be a game where the Ohio State secondary is really going to be on notice. I see them forcing at least 2 interceptions, if not 3.
Well, I'm sure with all that criticism on social media and otherwise, and what they're hearing from their coaches, we know that they've got athletes and they've got to be motivated, their own sense of pride and determination. And we know that this team is driven to win a championship. So I think a lot of that's going to be fixed by just them buckling down and really honing in on the coaching and instructing and the scheme and trying to get it. I can't believe we've gone this far, and we do have a couple minutes left if you guys can hang around, because I didn't even bring up, dived into that defense for so long. This number 4 ranking from the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Tony, you smiled first.
Well, I'll just say this. I was pre-writing the story, and I had Ohio State, college football playoff ranks Ohio State number 3 in initial poll. And that's where they should have been. And then you get to, they're revealing it, and they get to the top 6, and they're like, well, we've been told we have to reveal it this way for drama. And you're like, why is there drama in the top 4, top 5? And then you get to thinking, well, that's because they're going to put Clemson ahead of Ohio State because as Gary Barta said, Clemson has dominated every game they've played except for the one they lost, which is actually not true because they didn't dominate Syracuse. They didn't dominate Boston College. And Tom Moore and I did a podcast about this last night, and it's like, yes, don't get angry about it because it's meaningless. But what does get me angry is just the lying, the choose your own adventure way of saying, well, this is why we like this team. This is why we like this team. Why did they like Georgia? We like the win over Auburn. And, because there's nothing else to like. And really, if you like the win over Auburn, you probably think like rice is the tastiest food out there. And so, yeah, it doesn't mean anything right now, but having Ohio State, who is undefeated, it also shows me that even though they have Indiana ranked 12th, they don't believe Indiana's a 12th or 11th ranked team, whatever they have. They don't actually think they're that good, or else they wouldn't punish Ohio State for only beating them by 7.
Yeah. I mean, Steve, you're on mute again. Go ahead. I was just going to sit there and say it felt like that the trophies were already engraved, and they just didn't want to, we already got them done. I mean, we're not going to do this. So, I mean, it's so dishonest. Seriously, they go in, they already have their preconceived notions or whatnot. You know what? Right now, if you roll out Ohio State and Clemson on a neutral field, I'm not really liking Ohio State coming off of the Indiana game based on where the defense is. But as I put on social media, let's not forget, a top 10 loss will always mean more than a top 10 win.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm ambivalent. I'm like, the first rankings don't mean much, and there's a lot of football left to be played. And if Northwestern somehow runs the table and gets undefeated Indianapolis, then that'd be a quality win. And they did give Northwestern some proper credit, put them in at number 9, I think, or whatever it was. So I agree. Indiana got I think they're behind both Georgia and Oklahoma, who have 2 losses. So, Oklahoma to me, they are doing a good job of redeeming themselves here in the second half of the season. And, that was a good win for them over Oklahoma State, so to speak. But the Big 12 is really not in this discussion and whatever. I feel bad. I think for BYU, I think they should be a little higher up if you're basing it on eye test. Have they played a Power 5 team or a good Power 5 team? Probably not. But still, to dominate the teams that they played the way that they have, a Houston, a Navy, or, some of these other ones that they've played and played pretty well against. Boise State, they went in there and dominated them. They're usually a top 20 team. So, they deserve some credit and probably a little bit more. Maybe I've got them a little higher in my poll. I don't know. As I said, it's going to come out in the wash. And Ohio State's best thing they can do is just keep winning, and it all takes care of itself, and they'll be in. Do they have a realistic shot at number 1? Probably not. And, if Alabama wins out, certainly. And again, some of this is subconscious that one team has played 4 games and another team has played 8. That's just the way it is. And I don't know. When you play a game, you also put yourself at risk. And I think, Clemson, to their credit, at least has come through most of these games unscathed. Obviously, they lose to Notre Dame with a star by it because Lawrence didn't play. And now the guy that did play threw for 400 yards. Was Lawrence going to make that big of a difference? I don't know, but their defense couldn't stop Notre Dame, is what it looked like to me. So, and that has nothing to do with Lawrence or ukulele or anything else. So, I don't know. I'm just of a mind right now that it is what it is, and who cares? And they give Texas A&M a lot of credit. They really haven't done a whole lot. Florida to me has been pretty impressive at times, but so I don't know. They're very SEC happy. Let's just put it that way.
I think BYU also got the report coming out that they were ducking Washington didn't help them in this one, and I think maybe they were punished a little bit for that. And my other thing that I like, what Gary Barta said about Oklahoma was we really like their last 5 games. It's like, well, how do you feel about their 2 losses before that? The 2 losses in a row, one to a Kansas State team that is like 4-3. How do you feel about that one right now? And now we just like the last 5. That's what we're really looking at.
Well, I could sit here for the next hour, but I've already sat here for hours railing on, and I didn't think I would have much to rail on because I typically defend them to a certain extent just because it's a difficult assignment. And then the final assignment's extremely difficult because you've got 5 conferences or 10, depending on how you do the math, and you've got 4 slots. But I will say I'm no Clemson apologist, but I will state that in addition to not having Trevor Lawrence, and as Steve pointed out, the backup quarterback, I haven't said his name in weeks, Uiagalelei. Yes, he did throw for 439, and I don't think that there was any drop-off. There was a slight drop-off there. I think that could be evaluated that way. But they were missing 3 defensive starters, their best defensive lineman, their best linebacker, who's an All-American, James Skalski, in that game. So that's taken into consideration as well. Actually, I've got Ohio State ranked a lot lower. I've got Ohio State ranked number 8 in the country, and this is why. I believe in resume, and do I think Ohio State's the 8th best team? So you can approach this so many ways. So as Tony alluded to, are you ranking the 25 best teams in the country as you believe that they stand right this second, meaning the importance of each game gets ramped up as you play the season? So you're not taking just a resume to say week 1's as important as week 6, as week 9. You're basically saying, I think, as in Oklahoma's case, that they have improved and improved and improved. Therefore, I'm ranking them 11th. But if you take the entirety of the season, I've got them like 20th because they haven't put down the 11th best resume in the country. But it could be argued that they're the 11th best team right now. Iowa State's at 13. Oklahoma State's at, what's that, Kevin?
The Big Ten conference, pretty much on the whole, is garbage. Ohio State can't. They're playing Illinois, Michigan State, and Michigan, and with deference to Tony and his belief that that Jesus Christ himself is playing for them, they're not going to gain a lot of points by playing those 3 tomato cans.
Well, I think coming into the season that Ohio State had arguably the best team in the country. After watching them play and knowing some of the concerns, I still think that they're the 3rd or 4th best team in the country. But I've got them ranked on a resume. And yes, they can't help that the teams that they've played are 6-14. But I just find I could go on and on. I'll just stay with I was starting the Iowa State, Oklahoma State comparison. Iowa State's at 13. Oklahoma State's at 23. They have the same record. They play in the same conference. So therefore, all but one game was exactly the same. They've played the same teams, and Oklahoma State won the head-to-head against Iowa State. They actually beat a lot of the committee's inconsistencies are almost amusing because they push some teams into the rankings that actually contradict what they did elsewhere. So in this case, they're ranking Tulsa, which adds a quality win to Oklahoma State's resume out of conference, and they're ranking a team with the same record 10 spots behind, and Oklahoma State has no egregious losses, so that makes no sense. Northwestern, I guarantee you that if that was any other team in the Big Ten, practically, that they would be ranked a lot higher. And it was to my surprise that the committee ranked Iowa, which I have no issue with. They ranked Iowa, so that should be more to Northwestern's credit. And look at Purdue. Purdue lost on a horrible call last week. they would have been 3-1. Well, Purdue beat Iowa. If you give Purdue that 3-1 record, where do they rank Purdue? Like 15th in the nation? And Northwestern beat all those teams, and they're undefeated. So they're sitting at 8. Wisconsin's at 16, which, again, I'm trying to separate. Do I believe Wisconsin's one of the 15 best teams in the country? I do. I don't have them ranked right now because it's only two wins. They'll get themselves back in there in my rankings, but they're at 16. Northwestern's at 8. If you would have flipped that score from last week, Northwestern would be, even at 4-1 versus Wisconsin's 3-0, Northwestern would be out of sight, and Wisconsin would be that 8 versus 16. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's why I said they don't believe that Indiana is that good. They don't believe Northwestern is that good. They're forced to put these teams there, even though they don't actually think they're that good, and you can't get credit for beating them in those spots because, yeah, they may be the 8th team, but once they lose, they're going to be, down to the 17th, and then you've only beaten the 17th ranked team.
It's all about getting Georgia up there. They're in love with Georgia every year. It's all about getting Georgia up there.
It is weird. They do love Georgia no matter what.
Well, Georgia did lose to 2 of the best teams in the country. Now, Florida blew their doors off for the most part. Alabama did in the last 10 minutes of the game, but that was a great game until about 10 minutes left in the game when they lost to Alabama.
I mean, they were starting a youth mannequin at quarterback for most of the season. I mean, they finally have the right guy out there. I mean, again, it's got to be based on the totality of the season and those craptacular, whatever happens with there, you have to still, it all still has to be in there. I don't think you can just sit there and put it on trends or whatnot, but it really feels like the committee, and this is really only the first data point we have from this committee, but I'm going to assume they're going to be like every other one, that they're just based on trends and that they're going to sit there and contradict themselves time and time and time again and just get ready for a 2-loss Georgia to be still one of the last teams standing come December 20th when the final rankings come out, because it just reeks of that.
Well, they've got about 5 or 6 pillars that they lean on, but they just switch it up depending on the team and the situation or the comparison. So if they just want to go with what they consider to be the best teams, then if we rewrite history, they need to throw Ohio State in there in 2015, and they need to make some other adjustments of revisionist history. So, yeah, I again, to Steve's point, they overrate the SEC. And when I say overrate the SEC, it's an assumption made because there's no way to rate anybody aside from the Big 12 going out with 2 of its better teams, losing to Sunbelt teams, that should be a mark against the Big 12. Everybody else is neutral. They should be rated as neutral because they're only playing within their league. In the seasons in which the SEC go out there and kill everybody non-conference and win those big non-conference matchups, credit them. Absolutely, they did it. But we can't assume that this is 2017 or 2018. It's 2020. And these teams have to be evaluated against their conference, not against some assumption of how good they are.
It'll be interesting to see if Georgia rises, even though they only have games against South Carolina and Vanderbilt.
Yeah, well, that better not happen. All right, good stuff with these guys. I think Steve's on the record for 45-14, or was that just
oh man, they could drub them. That's a tough call. Let me listen to what everybody else says, and then I'll just ape off everybody else.
Sure.
I'm supposed to go last. That way I can make the best pick. Now I will go 52-17 Ohio State. Clearly, I think the Illinois defense has had its moments, but Ohio State right now has a balanced offensive attack. I think Illinois won't be able to run the ball as well. And if they can, then now we've got a new issue for Ohio State's defense. But I think they'll do okay running. And I don't think they have the quarterback to hurt Ohio State in the pass defense as much as Indiana did. And so I think fewer points given up, fewer big plays given up, some things being tightened up. I don't know that it means anything against Illinois, but I like Ohio State to cover.
Yeah, I have 56-17. I don't think that we're going to see Ohio State attempt a field goal until it absolutely has to attempt a field goal. That certainly is a problem at 2-5 on the season, 2 out of 5 on the season. I don't think Illinois is going to be able to do much offensively. I think you're going to see Ohio State come out and maybe keep its foot on the accelerator a little bit longer in this game. And as I mentioned earlier, even if it is a matter of bringing 2s and 3s in, you have to keep running the ones offense. You can't be running student body left, student body right. I think Illinois will pop off a couple of plays. I don't think that we're going to see an overnight fix to where all of a sudden Ohio State's defense is immaculate, but they'll take a major step in the right direction. They'll harass Brandon Peters, and I like Ohio State to win this one big.
Jim John,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say 48-14 just to move it away from the line. The line's 30, and I like to be a few points away from the line. So I think I'm now 34. So 48-14. I agree. I think this is an important game for Ohio State, and particularly the defense. They need to play 2 solid halves and get stops and, not allow big plays. And I don't think Illinois is a big play offense by any stretch of the imagination unless they hit a big run or something. So I think Peters is more of a station-to-station kind of guy, but we'll see, how it plays out. But I think Ohio State's offense is just going to keep right on churning, down the road, 50 or near it pretty much every week. And, particularly against these teams that don't have the pedigree. I think it's one thing, okay, if you're playing they put 600 yards up against the number 9 team in the country last week. So I don't think Illinois' defense is going to be probably as good as Indiana's. And, I haven't looked at all the rankings and everything, but any rate, 48-14, that's what I'll go with. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Be safe. And, we're going to be here hopefully every week. I joked in our little internal chat, has this game been canceled yet? Because a lot of them are going by the wayside with each passing hour, it seems like.
Jim John, I do understand that the ACC has played out of conference games. I was making an example of the Big 12 as playing games that were meaningful because of the negative impact on the perception and evaluation of the conference. The ACC has basically played games outside the conference that have not resulted in anything that should upgrade the conference or downgrade the conference. They've beaten Charlotte and Citadel and a bunch of games like that, and they lost 2 out of 3 games to Liberty, and UCF pummeled Georgia Tech. So if anything, the ACC should take a bit of a hit for their performance out of conference against a bunch of group of 5 teams. All right, very good. Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop, Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove, and of course, Steve Hellwagon, who's so gracious to post these videos on 247 Sports Bucknuts. We appreciate it, guys. Happy Thanksgiving to all, and enjoy the game this weekend.
Basketball today at 2:00 as well on ESPN, Illinois State, for anybody who needs reason to sit up this afternoon and watch sports. There you go.
We'll see y'all next